know it. Welcome again to another wonderful episode of CBD Pro's bi-monthly Canna-Curiosity stream. My name is Lucas. I'm the company educator for CBD Pros USA, and we're here today to talk about a rather complicated part of cannabis. A lot of times people wind up asking me a lot of different questions regarding it. Like, we've gone over some of the basics. What do each of these cannabinoids do? How do these types of products work? All numbers of different options, but one of the biggest issues that winds up plaguing both the hemp and marijuana industries together is the fact that not many people actually understand how it interacts with the body and why it interacts with the body in the way that it does. Thankfully, we do have this wonderful stream that we're able to answer all these questions for you. And that's what we're centering on today, is the endocannabinoid system itself. What it is, how it works with our body, why it interacts with things the way that it does, and why we gain so many benefits from it. And honestly, it's a topic that I love talking about, because when you get into the deep science of this plant and why it's so beneficial, why it's so helpful, that's when the passion really starts digging in, especially when you start seeing all the different effects that it has on every single person that walks through these doors, all the lives that you wind up helping and just changing for the better just because of this little plant. So let's go ahead and just dive into it, shall we? We've got a lot planned for today. I've got somebody on the line who's going to be joining me a little bit later on to talk about all the wonderful stuff that we're going over today. We'll get to her a little bit later, but for now, let's actually explain a little bit about this endocannabinoid system, shall we? So what is it? Well, basically it's this ancient system in our bodies that we've basically developed, millennia upon millennia ago, about 500 million years ago, more than likely. And it's all wired throughout our bodies and interacting with every single other system, not only as us as humans, but in every other vertebrate and even invertebrate in the world. In fact, the only type of animal that does not have an endocannabinoid system or retain any benefit from these types of chemical interactions are going to be insects, which honestly makes me a little bit sad, but what can you do? Now, thankfully, all this research that has been done recently, it's helped us realize that the ECS is designed to help maintain what's known as homeostasis, or basically just the balance of all the different processes in our body without having to worry about going through a whole bunch of rigmarole to make sure it does so. And while it appears to be this incredibly ancient system, the interesting thing is that scientists only discovered it very recently, actually, in the context of research specifically trying to understand why marijuana and hemp affects people the way that it does. And in the course of this work, the scientists that were doing it wound up actually discovering that the human body has these different receptors built into every single system. All of our organs, our muscles, our skin cells even have these different receptors just preset, ready to go. And they discovered that we actually make our own class of chemicals known as endocannabinoids, which wind up actually interacting with these receptors to try to keep our health balanced and working right. And because our body actually creates these chemicals, this is what allows the phytocannabinoids or plant-based cannabinoids to do their work. Two of the biggest cannabinoids in general, the ones that are most well known and most well talked about when dealing with any kind of cannabis product whatsoever, is going to be THC, otherwise known as tetrahydrocannabinol, and CBD, or full scientific name cannabidiol. And as I stated before, these guys are called phytocannabinoids, which if you break down the word, phyto means it's made in a plant. That's why with the other ones that are built within our bodies, they're known as endocannabinoids. Now, they're very similar to these endocannabinoids that are actually built within our body as well. And we'll get into a little bit further detail of that here in a minute, but understand that this discovery of the ECS, coupled with the awareness of the plant-based cannabinoids and the opportunity to even make kind of synthetic or semi-synthetic variants of them, basically has generated a substantial amount of scientific interest in understanding this system and why it interacts the way it does with our bodies and how it can help maintain health and alleviate all these symptoms of disease that people have been experiencing. And this is where it really starts getting interesting, at least for me, because before we even get into everything, there's a couple misconceptions that often wind up getting thrown around about the endocannabinoid system. And honestly, I felt like this would be a good opportunity to be able to go through and be able to address a couple of these misconceptions. First and foremost, one of the biggest misconceptions that even I get is that the ECS, or the endocannabinoid system, actually evolved in the body through consistent and chronic use of cannabis throughout the years. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because the ECS was actually discovered by retracing the metabolic pathways of the cannabinoids, hence its name. And it's not because these particles specifically interact with cannabinoids like THC and CBD, because cannabis in humans did not evolve symbiotically. They actually came around at different times altogether. So the fact is that we've actually had the system in our body for way longer than our interaction with the plant. And it's all because, like I said, our body actually makes its own cannabinoids to help with the regulation of all its systems. And likewise, endogenous cannabinoids are not actually cannabinoids, rather are made by the body, but rather they're endogenous particles that were discovered by studying the way cannabinoids are actually assimilated or absorbed within the body. So similarities in these structures do kind of exist between some cannabinoids and those produced within the human body, however. Those of you who may have watched some of the earlier segments that I had here on this YouTube channel may have seen that I talked a little bit about these guys when breaking down some of the cannabinoids initially. The two cannabinoids that do exist within the body primarily are going to be anandamide and AG2 or 2AG. And basically, they're each shaped like very specific cannabinoids. Anandamide generally has a very similar structure to THC, which is why THC hits some of these receptors as hard as it does. And then 2AG actually has a similar structure to CBD, which is why CBD interacts with the specific receptors that it does in the way that it does. So that's one of the coolest aspects about this. The reason why they wind up working well together is just because of a similar molecular shape in these different chemicals that are created by both the plant and our own bodies. So it's kind of interesting to think about how something like that could even come to be and be able to be so beneficial for us as a species in general, even if it's not perfect for all of us. It's wonderful to see the symbiosis between different life forms on this planet, for sure. Now, another common misconception that I tend to get a lot when dealing with the endocannabinoid system and everything to do with the ECS is that THC specifically binds only to the CB1 receptors and CBD binds to only the CB2 receptors. Now, the biggest thing is that CBD itself does not actually have a great affinity to either receptor, believe it or not, even though it reacts pretty well for a lot of different things. Pardon me one second here. Even though it works pretty well with a lot of different things, it definitely doesn't bind particularly perfectly with it. It actually binds primarily with more secondary receptor sites, such as our GABA receptors, the GABA receptors, as well as many other different ones, including our opioid, our serotonin, dopamine receptors, all over the place within our body. That's where you're going to get a much more direct interaction with CBD. Now, THC does primarily bind to CB1 receptor sites. Generally speaking, THC and CBD do have a lower affinity to receptor binding than the ones that are naturally made within our bodies. So 2-AG, anandamide, they're going to do much better at it. In fact, anandamide binds almost exclusively to the CB1 receptors in the body. So I know I've been talking a lot about these receptors, so let me go ahead and take a quick pause real quick and explain it some for you guys. So our body has numerous different types of cannabinoid receptors in it, but we have two primary ones, are CB1 and CB2 receptors. The CB1 receptors you're going to find primarily in your brain and central nervous system, all throughout the nerves in your body, and the CB2 is going to be primarily focused within your organs, your immune system, your muscles, things of that nature. So whenever you hear about what these different chemicals wind up binding to, this will kind of give you an understanding as to what kind of effects that it winds up producing. In case of CB1, that's when you're going to get a lot more of the nerve-related effects, a lot more of the psychological effects. CB2 is going to be a lot more of those physically leading effects, and so on and so forth. Now, what's interesting is, like I was stating, not only does anandamide bind almost exclusively to CB1, but 2-AG actually binds to both CB1 and CB2 receptors, which is why anything that winds up being more similar to 2-AG tends to have a much better binding effect with both receptors rather than just THC. Now, THC does actually increase the potential for your inbuilt anandamide to bind with those CB1 receptors. And one thing to understand about anandamide is that it's known colloquially as the bliss molecule. It's the thing that's actually responsible for the runner's high that you get from exercise, not endorphins. It's that beautiful feeling, that blissful, energetic buzz. That's all anandamide. And that even gets released by things such as hugging, believe it or not. So when you're utilizing THC, that's why it tends to feel so much more blissful, so much more connected, due to the fact that it's actually allowing that self-built chemical within our bodies to bind even better with these receptors within it. Now, CBD actually increases the potential for 2-AG to bind with the CB1 and CB2 receptors. CBD actually works kind of as a connecting bridge, very similarly to a lot of other chemicals that you can wind up finding in your body. So it's definitely very beneficial to keep around, more than most people realize. Even heavy recreational users should definitely keep a CBD regimen going, because the benefits it can provide to your entire body are unreal. Now, another cool thing about CBD is it can actually hitch a ride with other particles, and that actually allows it to bind to other sites beyond those CB1 and CB2 receptors. This is why I state that it's able to bind to your opioid receptors and your serotonin receptors, your dopamine receptors, all of it. It's all because of this capability to hitch a ride on all these other different chemicals that are made. And in all, a lot of people try to think that you can think of these cannabinoids and endocannabinoids as keys that fit into a lock, but in reality it's significantly more complicated, as no doubt you can tell by just this explanation. But suffice to say that the interaction that these cannabinoids have with our body is extremely thorough and a lot more nuanced than a lot of people initially expected it to be. So to completely ignore it would definitely be doing your body a disservice. Another misconception that usually comes up a lot is that cannabinoids are only found in the cannabis plant. This is definitely not the case, not by a long shot. You can actually find cannabinoids in hops, as well as several other different relatives of the cannabis plant. All these different variations of kind of the same overarching family of plants generally do create cannabinoids of one form or another. And it's even theorized that they could exist in different types of distant relatives as well, other plants beyond these types of close-knit family groups, as well as even things that may not have even gotten studied yet. So this is an ongoing research field, something that is continually being expanded on, continually growing in terms of the depth of information and knowledge that has become available. So never take any of these videos if you're watching it way, way, way in the future as being rock solid on the science. For all I know, the science could have changed significantly by the time you come across this. But for right now, this is where the science stands. Now, this one's great. A lot of people try to state that CB1 receptors are only in the brain, and CB2 receptors are only in the white blood cells and the body. And this is just a gross simplification. Even with kind of the small breakdown that I made, you can basically find CB1 receptors anywhere that neurons are found, any type of nerve ending. You can find it in your skin, you can find it all throughout your body in every single place. Wherever the nerves are, that's where CBD or CB1 receptors are. And they do tend to be in the area directly adjacent to the synaptic cleft, which basically means like right where everything joins up, they'll be right next door to it to make it a little easier for everything there. So now we do have a wonderful little guest joining us, and I did mention this before. Coming to us live, we're going to be bringing in a wonderful guest named Krista, one of my favorite coworkers in the company. She is as sharp as a tack, and I love bouncing off these different things with her, especially when it comes to all the different science and everything behind it. So first off, let me go ahead and make sure my own audio levels are good here, because Lord only knows. Last thing we need is any kind of overlapping of sound. There we go. Now, go ahead and welcome with me our wonderful friend, Krista, as long as, is she there? Oh, it seems like we might have dropped a little bit of an internet connection issue. No worries there. One of the best things about technology, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there we are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. There we are. I turned off my video so that hopefully you should be able to hear me just cleanly.
Here.
Does seem to be a little bit unstable. Let me see. Might be on my end. Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
There we are. I hear you a little bit better now.
Excellent.
Well, welcome, Krista. How are you doing today?
Oh, blessed and highly favored. Gonna smoke me some Donnie's burgers and talk about the best thing ever.
Definitely. The Donnie burgers are great. I'm absolutely a fan of it. For those who are unaware, we here at CBD Pros want to finally getting in some THCA concentrates. And for those who are unaware, THCA is the acidic precursor to normal delta-9 THC, which basically just means it requires a little bit of decarboxylation in order to gain all the benefits of it and activate that cannabinoid. And luckily, it does the job quite well. It's a very pleasant overall sensation, provides some decent medicinal and recreational benefits, and something that I often recommend people to try out. So, yes, Krista, so welcome to our little education stream. This is your first time joining us here. Say hi to all the people out there who are watching.
Hi, ATL.
It's more than just ATL, it's even Texas and the rest of the world. Remember, this is on YouTube. Everybody's seeing you. But yeah, so tell me.
I know, but I don't get to work with the ATL people, so I just wanted to say hi to y'all specifically.
Oh, definitely. Well, we definitely love having you with us there,
It cut
Krista.
out a little bit with What'd you say?
No worries. It's just a small delay on our end, so if you ever hear me kind of cut in, no worries. I'll always wind up waiting for you to be able to gain that connection and be able to speak back with me. Um, Definitely no worries on that. Now, when you do get a connection back, I'm gonna run a couple things by you because I want to see what your explanations are on a couple of these things. So, why don't you explain to these good people at home? Do you happen to know exactly what an endocannabinoid is?
Thank you for having me.
Hey, we're happy to have you. It does seem like we've got a little bit of lag issues, which is a little unfortunate. But worst case scenarios, this is why we work on these types of things. If anything, you're welcome to try to see if turning off the video might increase the capabilities. See if that stops any kind of lag. Anything? No? Oh. Well, this might be a little bit unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. It does seem like we may have lost our wonderful guest because there's definitely there's definitely a little bit of lag issues. It does happen from time to time. But no worries. So to go ahead and just explain a little bit about what endocannabinoids are for all of you who are watching at home, they're basically nothing more than neurotransmitters that are derived from lipids, which are basically just fat cells. The body makes these naturally, and so do many, many different plants. And they're the two primary ones that you're going to find are going to be, like I said, anandamide and 2-AG. If you ever look in any scientific research paperwork, however, you might see these listed out by their full scientific name. Anandamide is known as arachidinyl ethanolamide, but it's definitely a mouthful, so don't worry about ever having to say that one. And then 2-AG is just short for 2-arachidinyl glycerol, so kind of like sugar in a way. And they're actually synthesized on demand by our body. It's able to rapidly produce these guys super, super quickly rather than having to make them in advance and kind of store them off to the side. It definitely helps our bodies out a lot to be able to produce it at that rapid pace. So even when you're utilizing the phytocannabinoids, that just kind of mimics in terms of the speed that our own body does, which is another reason why it works so well within our bodies. Now, as to the cannabinoid receptors, basically they just they just reside on the surface of a variety of different cells in our body. And all they do is trigger a physiological response of one kind or another. The CB1 receptors, as I stated, they're going to be mainly in the central nervous system, especially the neurons in the brain. That's where they're primarily focused, which is why there tends to be that misconception that I mentioned earlier. But no matter what, due to the extensiveness of their prevalency in the body, and that is why THC and anandamide can feel that whole body buzzy sensation that happens. So if you ever wondered where that came from, that's the answer there. Now, I could go for days about the science, and Lord knows I really do. But a lot of people wonder more often than not, and they just ask me straight up, so what does it do? Can you break it down to me in a very simple, easy to understand fashion? Well, science basically believed that the ECS is there to keep balance in our body, make sure the systems work together cleanly, that there's no hiccups or basically ground gears in the operation. The machine has to keep oiled in order to keep moving fluidly. Very similar situation when it comes to our endocannabinoid system. You can almost think of it as it's just basically like the motor oil of our body. It makes sure everything works better. It makes sure there's no issues in the operation, that you're not getting any synaptic jerks or anything of that like. So now, hopefully, I'm getting word that our technical issues may have gotten solved here. We're gonna try once more there. Krista, are you
Hopefully.
with us?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. So it does look like the video
Sweet.
tends to
Okay,
be
you
the
can hear me.
biggest issue there, but like, thankfully it seems like we figured that one out.
Shout out to Alex.
Oh yeah, shout out to our IT guy, Alex. He is the guy who's in the background right now, making sure all this works and looks as pretty as you see it look right now. Lord only knows, I do not have this capability, so without him, this would not be functioning. Thank you, Alex. Now, Krista, so
Yes.
now that you're here, I'd like to ask you, like we were going over just now the basic purpose of the ECS. What kinds of
hmm
things does the ECS help with?
It's essentially how the body is able to align and give it a sense of homeostasis and balance from within. It's essentially how we're able to reap the benefits of THC and CBD for
Awesome.
medicinal or recreational use.
Definitely. Now, in terms of like issues and like symptoms people have, like what kinds of things can it help regulate?
Pain, stress, anxiety, you name it. Pretty much all ailments for the most part. If you use it correctly and use the products correctly and you use the product, like if you add like even just like full spectrum, just add a little bit of full spectrum to essentially kick in the entourage effect so that way you're able to reap the benefits of the products you're taking. It essentially just goes all back into four tenfold.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is that research has shown that it actually seems to go even further than that. Like the ECS seems to be able to manage things like our metabolism, it's able to manage our immune function even. And not only that, but it seems to even assist with reproduction and our reproductive organs, which kind of blew my mind when I found that out. But it really is an all in one, so Lord knows. I know I keep researching it like crazy. I don't know about you, but it's something that I just can't stop talking about.
Yeah,
100%. Like,
absolutely.
I know, like, when I get home, like, there are times where I'll be talking with my friends, and they'll bring up often, like, oh man, I'm dealing with a lot of pain today. And immediately I'm going, oh, well, you know, you could fight that with, and just shouting out things to help them out. And oftentimes I
I'd
get
be
that wonderful
so
thing like,
quick.
bro, you're not at work.
Yes, I do that all the time. Like my man will be like, I have the worst sleep. I can't sleep. I'll be like, oh, I know what product would work for that. And then I try to come up with a little regimen. He'd be like, chill out.
But that's the thing, when we're dealing with this level of passion, like, it's unreal what we've seen work and what the science shows work. So it's why we're diving into this. We want
Absolutely.
people to know what the endocannabinoid system can do because there's just too much that's left out by too many places out there.
Exactly. Less pharma, more farm.
Exactly. Now, one thing that I found that was actually really cool that I think you will too was that did you know that CBD actually can stop the enzyme that breaks down anandamide, the bliss molecule?
Interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Put me
that's
on.
something that I actually that I literally just found out thanks to the research from another one of our people, Ashton. Ashton is the manager here at the Norcross store, and she helps me a lot with a lot of the background research, find some things that even I wind up overlooking. And this one definitely caught me by surprise, but one of the reasons why utilizing CBD tends to just help overall with helping you feel good throughout the day is because it stops that enzyme from breaking it down.
Interesting.
I know,
I'm
like
gonna have to do more research.
oh, believe me, even I'm over here going, I think I need to hop back on that rabbit hole again. But
Yeah, because every time we get a new product in store, I'm one of those people that like I'm looking at the lab results, I'm looking at the individual ingredients, what they do, what's the benefits, and I'm writing it down. Like I'm always super, super thorough, so that way I can relay it to my coworkers, so that way I can set us up for success and not failure, for sure.
Absolutely. And like for everybody out there, like what you guys need to be aware of is that this is very important. The lab reports are going to be your key way of understanding any product in the cannabis industry. And you're always going to want to make sure that these places and these different products that you get actually do have a lab report available. Without these lab reports, you never know what's actually in it. You're always going to wind up worrying and just being left in the dark. And I prefer to know. So check those lab reports, do your research, and understand why we're as excited about this industry as we are, by far and away.
If they don't have COAs, it's a no way.
Amen to that. Those
I
COAs are the lifeblood.
ain't doing it.
And another cool thing about CBD
You know
is
that's
that did you know that
right.
it's about did you know CBD is about 20 times more anti-inflammatory than aspirin?
I did know that actually.
That one
I actually
has
did know
been
that.
amazing for me. Like, I have a bad knee myself,
That's
for
why I
those of you out there
love
who
the
don't know.
Enjoy Relief gummies
Oh,
because they
God,
have
yes.
CBD and CBG with turmeric.
Yes, and that turmeric's a big deal. Like, turmeric in
Man, people be
combination with CBG and CBD, that's going to be an unreal anti-inflammation
amazing.
combo for you guys, by far.
And if you want to throw some THC in it, take a Delta 8 Wildberry.
Yep, for the additional
Sets the
pain
tone.
reduction and the muscle tension relief.
And the added turmeric.
Oh,
You can't
God.
lose.
Absolutely not. But yeah, man, like this is one of the coolest things. Like I know for me, one of the things about the endocannabinoid system that actually blew my mind was how much it affected my body. Because before I started working here and really started diving into the science, I used to think that the CBD industry was mainly a big scam. Like a lot of places were doing a lot of snake oil and a lot of stuff that just
Yep.
wasn't of high quality. And it wasn't until I got here and started getting with some decent quality products that I started actually experiencing a difference. And for me, the biggest thing that showed that it had that type of direct interaction was when I started taking very high doses of CBG, the mother cannabinoid.
Hmm.
And the amount of inflammation reduction I get off of that, the amount of anxiety and depression reduction I get is unreal. And when you start these different processes and you actually go through this good regimen, it just fixes and enhances everything else in the body. And it just makes it, I like barely touch medication anymore.
Right. I
Like,
literally have to be on shit. I have to be on my deathbed to take medication.
oh yeah, careful with that spit down the wrong tube. She definitely does hurt. But no,
I was hitting
like,
that Donnie's burger. Y'all, sorry.
oh yeah, the Donnie Burger. But no, it's definitely been an interesting journey, and it's all thanks to the ECS, and I love it to death because of it. Now, what's really cool, another cool thing is that there are actually ways to make your ECS better. A lot of people don't really understand that. A lot of people don't know it. But if you're using another really good anti-inflammatory option, black pepper, it can actually help
Oh,
enhance the activity of your endocannabinoid system. So it actually seems to kind of boost it, make it kind of get a little bit of a kick in the teeth some. So there's actually a lot of different things that
there's
you
a
can
reason I
take.
like them up really up
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of different things that you can just
because
add
of the
to your
black pepper.
food that just make things better. Like oregano helps it out, dark truffles, dark chocolate. All these different things can actually help boost and enhance all the activity of your endocannabinoid system, which is why you'll even find a lot of these becoming edibles, like the chocolates especially, because of how well it can make everything work together with your body. Because for you at home, I don't know if you knew, but dark chocolate can actually help release serotonin in your body. So with the combination with any of the types of cannabinoids and THC, that's why it tends to work so well as an edible for many people.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting.
And not
See,
only
I
that,
just need you to come out here and I can just write a book on everything that you say so that way I can always refer back to it because you're literally like the encyclopedia of cannabis.
don't trust. When it comes down to it, everything I know is out there. The hardest thing to do is just research through the paperwork. There's a lot of it, and without the help of the people, of everybody else here in the company, Lord knows, there's no way I could concisely put it together enough to be able to share it with people. I would wind up just rambling on for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And while that could be amusing for me, it's not exactly the best thing for one of these live streams.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
But no, it's,
Yeah, that's why I need you to come out here.
hey, one of these days, nowhere's there. And hey, who knows, maybe one of these days we'll have you come out here so you can see the ATL life, huh?
Ooh, I would love to. I would love to.
It's a trip, that's for
I would
sure.
love to come and Oh, I know it. I'm trying to go see what it's like over there.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
ATL seems fun.
Oh yeah. Now,
Yeah, that's what
what's
I
real
heard.
interesting, the reason you want to know why black pepper works as well as it does to help enhance things, though?
Yeah,
It's
put me
because
on.
it actually releases a little substance or a terpene known as beta caryophyllene. And specifically, beta
And
caryophyllene is
it
the
is a
guy that's,
terpene.
yeah, beta caryophyllene is the guy that's most responsible for the anti-inflammation and the pain relieving effects because it actually stimulates the CB2 receptors. So that's another reason why black pepper is so good in different foods and why it's always recommended by different health professionals is because of the fact that it works directly with these receptors and make them work better.
That honestly makes so much sense. Because if I take like, because although I'm 25, I have the body of a 60-year-old, and it does not make any sense. And like, I think when I'm like presenting like pain products to like older guests, they'll be like, "You're lying," and I'll be like, "No, try this, and you will understand why I'm such a big advocate for this stuff."
I
Like,
can
especially
actually
like with
explain why you are probably
okay,
getting with that level of feeling that you are too. Because a lot of the times people wind up coming and talking with me, especially explaining how they don't understand why they're in the level of pain they're in, why they're dealing with this type of stuff when they're as young as they are. I get people even as young as like 18, 19, 20 who have talked with me asking about issues like this. Like, they're too young, they shouldn't be having these pains. But when you take a look at the system that has been built around us, if you're not eating healthy foods and getting everything that your body needs, your endocannabinoid system is going to start faltering. If you're taking chemical substances that alter the way that your body works in a not always positive way, it can ruin your endocannabinoid system and make you more dependent on those substances rather than your body's natural capabilities. And the worst part is, it's just a consistent cycle round and around that we're stuck paying. Because what winds up happening is we eat all this junk food and everything that's pushed all over the place. And while yes, it is tasty, Lord knows I have finally gotten to taste the joy of a Whataburger, and I understand now. But
disgusting.
it's absolutely disgusting, but it's good. So
In and
that's the
out is
problem.
better.
Well, look, we're not going to have a fast food war on this channel. We're not. CBD Pros would like to maintain its neutrality on the fast food wars that are going on
We already
today.
did that on Discord.
Right. But but no, it's actually this whole thing because all these things don't have the right nutrients and are loaded with these different fats and salts and preservatives that wind up causing our body to create other types of chemicals to try to counteract it. It's causing a natural breakdown and it causes us to feel bad. So what do we do when we feel bad? We go to the doctors. But because all natural practices and remedies were written out of the American Pharmacopoeia way back in the, I believe, the 30s, it wound up making it to where everything relies on prescription medication, which, under the right usage, can, yes, be beneficial. But the problem that winds up happening is that they have made it to where it's the only thing that's recommended by doctors. And because of that, when you're reliant upon synthetic chemical substances, that also can cause an imbalance and a mess up within our endocannabinoid system. It causes the receptors to fire differently. It causes buildups of lipids to happen strangely. It causes production of our different endocannabinoids to occur at different rates and different intensities. And when you go through and they prescribe you those chemical substances, that makes us feel better-ish, but then we usually need things to help with the side effects that the things that we're taking to help us out are supposedly giving us. So that's more pills and more pills and more money and more money. And then we buy more food to make us feel better for the fact that we're dealing with the pills, but the food that we're buying is bad, so we go back to the doctor, and it's just a cycle. So ever since it was actually taken out of the American Pharmacopoeia, we're stuck in this big loop of making ourselves sick and then paying to have somebody else make us feel better from something that we can handle ourselves and something that our body is designed to handle itself. And that's the crazy part.
I want to ask you how you feel about lately I've been seeing like posts about like the FDA, it's FDA approved CBD. And I've been wanting to ask how you feel about it, if you've heard about it or anything like that. But I've been seeing it around for the past like month or so, so I want to see how you feel about it.
The only thing that can be FDA approved, in fact, I don't even think that CBD itself is fully FDA approved. Like, they've started to
Well,
acknowledge the
I
benefits.
think it's like one specific. It's called Epidol.
You seem to be getting a little bit of lag there.
It is the only FDA approved prescription CBD medicine.
You're talking about
Epidiolex. E P
Epidiolex,
I
yes.
D I O L E X.
Yep.
Yes.
Epidiolex, otherwise has been prescribed as Marinol to multiple people who have been dealing with very, very, very bad pains and cancer regimens. I actually knew somebody at one point in my life who was going through HIV and then went and had a blood transfusion, and they wound up giving him blood that was tainted with hepatitis B. And so he wound up getting a hit of Hep B and HIV at the same time. So sad to say he's not with us any longer. But during his fight, one of the pills that they gave him was Marinol, Epidiolex. And it blew my mind when all of a sudden he's like, yeah, look, it's basically just THC rosin in a capsule that is okayed by the government. And I'm here like, but that's telling me that they acknowledge the medicinal benefit of the cannabis, but they're saying there's no medicinal benefit to the cannabis because of the DEA
Right.
scheduling as a Schedule II drug, which then winds up just being ultimately confusing. Or a Schedule I drug, pardon me. But it's
I was
literally
gonna say,
gotten to
did
the
they
point.
lower it?
Yeah, no. They're talking about rescheduling it. In fact, there have been calls from within the DEA itself to reschedule the drug, to reschedule it, and they're potentially thinking of scheduling it as a Schedule III. I think has been the latest word so far, which would be significantly better than where it's at, but still
Yes.
is still too much. It really shouldn't be scheduled at all, in my opinion, but alas.
I agree.
Now, from there, but no, I digress. But yeah, there is. Oh, and let's not forget that currently we're looking at the Safe Banking Act finally potentially being passed. It was finally
Thank
passed
you,
by the Senate, I
jeez.
think. I think they finally passed the Senate, so now I think it's going to the president to be signed. So,
Fingers crossed,
yeah,
because it's so crazy how many hoops you have to jump through to be able to put your money in a safe place,
it
just
absolutely
because you
is.
work in the cannabis industry.
Absolutely is. And it really shouldn't be the case at all.
At all.
But no, like, now, I do want to also take some of this time to kind of run over some of the cannabinoids, and just how they interact with the body, what receptors they kind of hit the most, so on and so forth. Um, that way, a couple of you guys actually know a little bit more about what to expect from certain things. And the first thing I'm going to touch on is I'm going immediately into the recreational ones right off the bat, because a lot of people
Yes.
have asked the differences with Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10 THC and how they affect the body differently. And after running through the endocannabinoid system with you guys, now you'll be able to understand what I mean when I say some of these next things. So, for those of you who have always wondered what the difference between the deltas are, first thing to make of note is that delta 11 THC is nothing more than a buzzword for 11 hydroxy THC, which is created when THC is metabolized by the liver. So do not believe that it is a new delta. There was a lot saying that it potentially was, but after further research, it is not. But beyond that, delta 8, delta 9, delta 10. What's the difference? Is 10 more powerful? Is 8 less powerful? A lot of common misconceptions. So, delta 8 actually hits your CB2 receptors primarily, unlike standard THC, which tends to primarily hit the CB1, even though it hits both. It definitely has a much more affinity towards the CB2 receptor. So, whenever you're utilizing it in any type of inhalation form, it seems to provide a much more body centric experience, a lot less neurological and psychological in effect. And that's why most people who utilize Delta 8 medicinally will wind up utilizing it for things like muscle tension reduction and pain relief and sleep cycle regulation, things of that nature. And then on the other end of the spectrum is Delta 10, which hits those CB1s, the brain, the nerves, all of that, which is why it's much more cerebral and psychoactive. Now, I gotta ask there, Krista, over where you are, how often do people come in basically misunderstanding how those cannabinoids wind up hitting the body or what their benefits are?
All the time.
All the time.
Whether it's a first time guest just trying us out or a returning guest, they're like, oh, let me get Delta 10 because it's stronger than Delta 8. False.
Yeah.
So I know I'm not sure if all stores have, like, so we have like a neon sign in at the Colony location which has like the molecular scale of THC, right?
Hmm.
And usually when I have a guest that asks me like the difference between Delta 8, 9, and 10, I always direct them to that wall, and essentially I just tell them. And it's actually funny because it's something you told me when I was doing my virtual training 8, 9 months ago. The difference between Delta 8, 9, and 10, it's not one is stronger than the other. It's essentially in the eighth, ninth, and 10th place of the teams, but that's just essentially of how of course, it does bond. Actually, just ask different something like are you that does different head feel for more of your daytime, or are you wanting more of that meets in the middle, the best of both worlds with the hybrid, or if you're wanting more of that straight indica, into couch, more of that nighttime type of vibe. And then that's kind of where I navigate based off not only just the cannabinoids itself, but also the added terpenes as well, because those both play into how the effects is going to.
Yeah, 100% on that. And that's another thing I want to touch on again. The biggest difference between Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10, as Krista stated, is the fact that there's really, it's just the position of this double carbon connector in the molecule. That's it. That's what that delta stands for. It's either in the eighth position, the ninth position, or the 10th position of the molecule. So a lot of people are come under the common misconception, bigger number equal better feel. But unfortunately, the caveman logic doesn't work in this regard. It's definitely it's definitely much more nuanced than that. And strength really is subjective. A lot of what people consider to be stronger is more effective. And that is something that I always want people to be aware of. Your own experience with a cannabinoid does not mean that that cannabinoid itself is stronger or weaker. It just means that it's more or less effective for you. So if you're enjoying a cannabinoid like, let's say, Delta 8, but your best friend tries one of the gummies that you got, and winds up having a very bad experience, or no experience at all, it doesn't mean that it's a bad cannabinoid. It just means it's not right for them. And everybody's body is going to be unique with this. And this is something a lot of the CBD industry doesn't seem to say too much, is that everybody's reaction to any chemical substance that has been made is going to be wildly different. You're never going to have two identical reactions to an identical dosage of an identical chemical substance. It just does not occur. Everybody's going to wind up having some kind of difference, some shift in experience or feeling or overall benefits, because of the fact that no two people process anything the same. Our livers always do things at different rates, our bodies, our cells, everything. So that's why I was so suspect at first with the CBD industry especially, it was constantly called a cure-all, when that's not the case. It's just a good foundation.
Exactly. And shoot, I felt the same way. You know, me being originally from California, actually working in the actual cannabis industry for years prior to moving out here, I was like, I don't want, CBD, Delta 8, none of that stuff. Like, I was one of those people that was like, no, that's diet weed. Until I actually started working in the hemp industry, trying out products, and not even just like at my old job, but just working here in general. Like, the products that we have, like, they are phenomenal. And I could be biased, and I tell my guests this all the time, like, we have amazing products, and it's probably the best products you will ever find. And I might be biased because I work here, and not too many places can say that.
And honestly, I have to agree with that statement, because I've been dealing with cannabis for about 20 plus years at this point. And at this point, after trying cannabis for this long and
Job
attempting
and
to
whatever,
utilize it,
but no,
it's definitely shown it's much more
like,
beneficial
we
than the
have
high quality.
amazing products, and then the education to back that.
Absolutely there. So definitely, no matter what, you always want to make sure the quality is on point. Like, no matter where you wind up going, if you ever try something from a company and you notice that the first time you use it is different than the second time, or like each time you try it, it's a different overall sensation, especially with gummies, you may want to bring up potentially batch consistency. Like, there's so many different issues that can happen in an industry that is unregulated. And that's why you always got to look for places with good manufacturing procedures. They follow through, making sure to follow all the ethics and safety capabilities that are required for all these different products out there. And the biggest thing I want people to take from this, no matter what, is to keep educated. Make sure places you get your product from are educated and understand how that product's going to wind up affecting you, or at least how it should affect you. Like, there's too much unsurety in this world already. So the science is really going to be the biggest thing that helps us out the most moving forward. Without it, God only knows what we'd be able to deal with, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
Now, while I got you here, Krista, since we are kind of starting to drag on a little in time here, let me ask you, like, of the different cannabinoids that are produced, which one do you utilize the most and why?
What cannabinoids I use the most?
Like, which one, if you had to choose one cannabinoid that you use the most for a medicinal purpose, what would it be and why?
CBG.
CBG. And why is that?
Mm-hmm. So for one, it's the mother of all cannabinoids. It's the chemical parent to THC and CBD, but it's literally great for every problem known to man. Mood, sleep, pain, anxiety, and inflammation all in one.
And what do
That's
you
all of
mean
my
by
problems all in one.
and what do you mean by mother cannabinoid? What does that mean?
It's like the head honcho, the OG, and it bonds it. If I'm not mistaken, please educate me if I'm wrong. But it actually bonds to both receptors, the CB1 and CB2.
It does. And to kind of expand further on the
Cool.
whole OG aspect for you guys out there, it's called the mother cannabinoid because it's literally the first cannabinoid that's produced within a cannabis plant as it's growing. When you first get those little baby cannabis plants, the primary cannabinoid you're going to find in it is actually the acidic precursor to CBG, CBGA. And as the cannabinoid, and as the plant grows and matures and ages, it will actually slowly convert some of this CBGA into all of the different cannabinoids that you find within the plant. And it's one of the reasons why CBG is so beneficial and why high CBG strains of cannabis seem to be so popular due to the fact of its capabilities within the body.
That actually makes sense.
hmm And
See, what we need to do is have Delta 8 and CBG gummies.
yes, that is definitely something I agree with, and something that no doubt will be in the future. But for now, we definitely want to make sure that people really get the experience of each of these guys individually. It's why we're only just starting to get into the blends. Now, from here,
Makes sense.
from here, I gotta say, I do agree that CBG is probably one of the best cannabinoids out there for a majority of people who are dealing with any type of anxiety, depression, just your brain won't shut up, any of that. It's fantastic. And had the side benefit of reducing the inflammation in my knee. I'll forever be thankful for that guy.
Yes.
But
Facts. I use it for my lower back pain, especially, or like for my PCOS pain, or just my PCOS in general. I
mhm,
love to layer the Enjoy Intimacy gummies with the Delta 8 rosin tincture. And oh my gosh, like the first time I was like a little skeptical on tinctures when I first started.
mhm.
So I got a syringe of the rosin.
Oh
And I
yes.
was going through so much pain, like to the point where I couldn't get up out of bed. And I was like, ooh, I remembered I had it. So I tried it. I'm sitting in bed, 10 minutes go by. I'm like, hold on, I don't have no pain.
Yep.
I was able to get up, go out, do what I needed to do. And like, I literally tell that to all of my guests that come in and they have pain issues and they're open to THC. Because when I get them on that, they're constantly coming back and buying it again and again and again.
Oh yeah,
Those little
cause
sprinkles
oh yeah.
definitely go a long way.
Oh yeah, because the rosin is actually really good. Because rosin,
Yes.
for those of you who don't know, is actually straight heat pressed from the plant. So you're not dealing with any kind of solvents or leftover chemicals or anything that might be there to ruin anything.
Mhm.
Plus, since it's heat pressed, it automatically activates all the cannabinoids. So you're getting the full benefit from every single one of the every single one of the cannabinoids present, without having to worry about anything just being left by the wayside simply because it's not activated yet. So while rosin products may not taste the best, they're
Right.
definitely very effective.
A- Absolutely.
But yes, so for now, however, I think now is a pretty good time to go ahead and take a small little break. Let those of you at home to have a nice little quick second to get yourself some water, everything like that. Krista, I wanted to thank you for joining me. I feel like having you here has been really great, and I would love to see how things might go in the future. Is there anything that you want to say to the people at large before we wind up letting you go?
No, just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity
Hi everyone, and welcome back to CBD Pros Canna-Curiosity's live stream. Once again, I'm Lucas. I'm the company educator for CBD Pros USA, and I'm here bringing you guys all the best information that I got both online and in this little noggin of mine, hopefully in order to be able to get you guys just as up to speed as I am about everything to do with this crazy confusing industry and why everything works the way it does. If you missed the first part of this, well, you're definitely going to want to go back and watch it at some point once it's fully posted, because we touched on the entirety of the endocannabinoid system, how the receptors wind up working within our bodies, why it all works the way it does. And now it's time to kind of go into a little bit less rigid, less structured kind of a segment here. What I intend to do now is I'm going to actually go through a couple of different cannabinoids with you, explain what some of their benefits are, how they can wind up interacting, as well as a couple other facts for you guys to kind of leave away here with a good healthy heaping of knowledge. So, first up, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the whole reason why we're here, CBD. So CBD, cannabidiol, this guy is a jack of all trades. This is the perfect balance foundation for everything to build off of. A lot of places try to go and bill it as the cure-all, the thing that takes care of everything for you. You don't need anything else, and while it does touch on everything, I call it a jack of all trades for a reason. It's very much the general contractor of the group. You're not going to have him do anything super specialized, but he's definitely able to help you out here and there with all the different projects going on. In terms of its interaction with your endocannabinoid system, as we went over, it's definitely going to be far more likely to interact completely with the CB2 receptors, while having more of an indirect interaction with the CB1. So it winds up being much more physically relaxing and kind of mildly mentally relaxing, which is what a lot of people usually wind up feeling with it. Now, this isn't the case for everybody, but it's definitely the general overall consensus. Now, going from there, we've got CBC, which you'll see a lot, cannabichromine, great energy, great metabolism, great focus and clarity. A lot of people like to consider it the caffeine of the cannabinoid world, that little SC. And it's a good way to kind of keep it in mind, honestly. extra benefit, it also seems to help pretty nicely with inflammation, a little bit more so than CBD. So one that you might want to think about for keeping maybe a workout regimen. Now, moving from there, we got cannabidiol, CBG, my absolute favorite. As you heard me talking about with Krista, it's amazing for the inflammation, for anxiety, for depression, and just for overall mental clarity. Majority of people I give this to just denote that it just quiets down their mind, clears everything up, lifts up their mood, just makes the day overall a bit better. So if you're dealing with anything like that, maybe look into CBG as an alternative to CBD for something more uplifting and more beneficial during the workday. Moving from there, we have another cannabinoid that's very well known, CBN. CBN is known as the nighttime cannabinoid because of the fact that it's very good at regulating a sleep cycle as well as providing some really decent muscle tension reduction. So even in low doses, I'll go and recommend this guy as a post-workout to people because it just works fantastically at reducing those cramps. Now, an interesting thing to note about CBN is that it is just what happens to normal delta-9 THC whenever it ages and degrades over time, and it loses its intoxicating factor. As all the different binds of the molecules start breaking apart, it'll rearrange itself into the CBN molecule, providing more of that sleep benefit, which is why if you've ever had anybody who's utilized older amounts of flower and they ever got sleepy, that's the explanation under that. Now, other cannabinoids that you would wind up experiencing are usually going to fall under the more recreational category, but even those recreational cannabinoids have their own benefits. You've got numerous different types of capabilities that these different cannabinoids have, starting with delta-9 THC, which has been known to be very beneficial when dealing with things like PTSD, glaucoma, and many other issues of the sort. Not only that, but even with other things like delta-8. Delta-8's fantastic for muscle tension reduction, pain reduction. It can be much more calming without the kind of mental haze that's known to come along with delta-9 THC. Delta-10 can be fantastic for more of the creative, more clarifying cerebral effects. A lot of people use it to help with a lot of the more mentally stimulating or mentally calming aspects of things. And literally every cannabinoid you look into, it doesn't matter which one from what side, they have extensive benefits, even medicinally. So no matter what new ones come out, no matter what new hype you hear blasted by any CBD company, I highly recommend taking the time, doing the research, checking out each of these new cannabinoids that come up, because even if it's something that you may not have initially looked into, the benefits it could provide you could be beyond anything you expected. HHC, for example, something that many people have considered kind of that step up from delta-8 and 10, actually has significant anti-inflammatory properties and have even shown to reduce a lot of migraines and headaches in many people that use it. Not everybody, as some people do wind up getting an increase when they're dealing with anything that hits cerebral, but again, this just goes back to how everybody's body processes things differently. And it's honestly the hardest part about the CBD industry. So with any new cannabinoid you try, take it slow, take it easy, see how it's going to affect your body and what type of systems it winds up interacting with before you dive full bore into it. But regardless of anything, all these different cannabinoids will have some benefit for you in some way, shape, or form. You may just need to find the right dosage for it, unless your body just straight up doesn't interact with it. I know some people that get no benefit at all from delta-9 THC, whether recreationally or medicinally, because their body just does not process it. And it's usually a result of some kind of imbalance or like the liver not processing things properly. There's numerous different reasonings as to why this can happen. And that's the unfortunate part about it. Now, one last thing I wanted to touch on, especially, is this whole misconception around indicas, sativas, and hybrids. A lot of people swear by these terminologies and by their names, and they will say such things to me like, I only smoke sativas, or I only have items or things of that nature. And I need to dispel this right here and now. There is no such thing as a true sativa or indica any longer in the cannabis industry. And I know, I'm about to get a bunch of hate from a lot of you people who are dead set on the thought that you are only an indica person or you're only a sativa guy. But the reality is, it's been nothing but hybrids for quite a while now. Due to all the crossbreeding that's been going on in the cannabis industry and all the different hybridizations that have happened, everything is some level of hybrid. There are no true all sativa or all indica options anymore. And what people are utilizing these terms to describe now is their overall effects and sensations that they're getting from these different products and these different cannabinoids as they interact with their systems. And the problem is, it's not the right thing anymore. If you really are looking for specific effects, what you need to be focusing on are the terpenes. Now, what terpenes are basically the building blocks of essential oils, and you can find these guys not just in cannabis, but in plants all over the place. You've got things like limonene, which is found in citrus, which can be fantastic for helping with focus, clarity, a little bit of anti-anxiety and uplift. You've got caryophyllene found in black pepper, which is fantastic for inflammation and pain reduction and calming. You've got myrcene, which is found in mangoes and is coincidentally the reason people tell you to eat mangoes when you smoke, because it helps with a relaxing sedative experience that can just make you overall loose and calm. And you've got pinene, which, from as the name suggests, can be found in a lot of pine trees and even sage. And it's fantastic for clarity and focus, and even acts as a bronchodilator. And these effects are what people are coinciding with sativa or indica or hybrid. They're trying to get very specific effects or very specific combinations of them. And so they go for these terminologies as a way to think like, oh, this is exactly what makes me feel like this. And then when they smoke or ingest it, they're not getting the sensations they're expecting. And it's because what they've come to realize as being any sativa, an indica, or a hybrid has been what these terpenes and different cannabinoids wind up providing for the body. So next time you're going to look for something, ask yourself exactly what effects you're looking for. Are you looking for something that is both mentally stimulating but also physically relaxing? Then look for the terpenes that provide that. Each one will have its own extensive, exhaustive list of benefits, and there's hundreds of them out there. But there's a main grouping of them that you'll find. The ones I listed are great starting points. You'll also find things like humulene, which is fantastic for creative aspects. You'll find linalool, which is perfect for sleep. And these are the things that you're going to want to look at in terms of finding what is in these different products in order to understand exactly how it's going to affect you. Because otherwise you could get something labeled an indica thinking it's going to help you sleep, and all it does is make you feel extremely social and heavy and stuck, but you're getting no sleep on it at all. And that's because it may be marketed as an indica, but it doesn't have anything in it that'll make you sleepy, or at least not enough of the levels of it. It's just people wind up associating certain specific feelings like body heaviness, indica, couch. And that's just not the case anymore. So next time you go out there, start looking at those terps. Start understanding what it is that you're feeling and what might be causing that. And pay attention to it, so when you find that one cartridge or flower or concentrate or anything that winds up doing it for you, you'll be able to find similar products so that you're not stuck to that exact same terpene profile. Because if you get stuck to a terpene profile, you'll wind up building a tolerance to it, and it won't affect you as well as it could have otherwise. So definitely make sure that you're rotating your terpene profiles while still keeping within those effects that you want, which is why the research is important. Don't just rely on sativa or indica anymore, because it just does not cover it. Everything's a hybrid. Everything leans a little bit one way or the other. So now it's time to really dive in and put those lab coats on, guys, because otherwise you may not ever get exactly what you want. Because not everybody at these different stores that you go to may have wound up trying these products. And even if they have, their system doesn't process it the same way as yours does. And the only way you're ever going to be able to figure out what works best for you is if you start diving into it. Those terpenes and cannabinoid combinations are going to be your bread and butter and are going to be able to fine-tune your experience to fully hit exactly what you're trying to solve. So do that research, ask your bud tenders, ask the people at the CBD stores you shop at. If they don't know, maybe find one that does. But either way, don't even trust them even if they do tell you. Do your research, dive in. Because once you get that knowledge and that information, no buzzword's going to be able to stop you from getting the exact combo that you're looking for to make you the best feeling and the best work that you can get. So, yeah, if there's anything I can leave you guys on, research, and never take anything at face value. Pay attention to those lab reports, because as long as they're done right, they should give you a good understanding of what you're about to get yourself into. Follow through with good questions and good doubts about different items until you get to what actively works for you. And don't be afraid to experiment. Just because something has worked decent for you in the past doesn't mean it's the only thing that will. Try, expand, explore, because you never know what might be better for you waiting right around that corner. And generally, I can go on and on about this. I can talk forever about every aspect of these things, but at the end of the day, guys, it really comes into what you're capable of finding and what works best for your body. So don't just take my word for it. Go look. Go find out. Because the amount of benefit that this industry has brought to the world has been incalculable. And it just keeps getting better every day. New research keeps growing. New facts keep getting unearthed. New science keeps getting done, because it is an ever-evolving and an ever-flowing field of study, with more and more benefits being discovered each and every day. And while, yeah, we're going to keep bringing you these updates, perhaps not live in the future, but we're still going to be bringing you these updates every 2 months, bringing you the latest in the science that we find, any new topics that get brought up. If you have any questions for us to cover on our next one, please, by all means, reach out to us. Get that information here on this channel with any comments that you may have, or reach out to us directly at any of our CBD Pros email addresses. We'll be more than happy to answer these questions for you guys, because we know this industry is confusing, and we're happy to break it down for you and stop all this rigmarole and like tiptoeing around all the science and the facts in the industry in order to just make a sale. We want you guys safe, we want you guys good, and we want you guys feeling as good as we do every day. So reach out, let us know, and maybe we'll get to your questions on the next one. But for now, guys, that's all I have for you this time. It's been an absolute pleasure in order to be able to stay here and give you guys my knowledge and my experience. And I look forward to doing this for many, many months and years to come. But for now, I leave you with one more thing, guys. Take that risk. Dive down that rabbit hole. Find what works for you. Because the way you're going to feel once you do, it far outweighs any worries that you may have had prior. For now, guys, my name has been Lucas. I'm the company educator for CBD Pros USA. Saying thank you one last time for joining us here today on our Canna-Curiosity's live stream. I hope you all have a wonderful and fantastic holiday months coming up. And I thank you again for tuning in. You all be safe, have a beautiful day, and take care. Be safe.